I have a set like kind of warm-ups that I do just to help myself get from A to B as quickly as possible, so I'm ready to play. But that also entails playing a tune, and also entails playing, like improvising something, whether it's just something small, a blues, but anything just to be creative, just to suddenly, brush out those cobwebs.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Brad Mason. Brad is all about balance, whether it's in his role as the lead trumpet musical director for the legendary Blood, Sweat, and Tears, co-leading the Mason Brothers Quintet with his brother Elliot, or teaching trumpet at Northwestern University. Brad strives to find the balance of honoring the history and tradition of our trumpet lineage with the need to develop an updated approach to the technique and creativity needed in the world of modern music. Plus, he knows how to rock the facial hair. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am joined by Mr. Brad Mason. Brad, thank you so much for being with me today, man.
Thank you, Jose, for having me. I appreciate being here.
Oh man, this is great. I've been, I got hip to you. I think, man. I guess in retrospect, I probably heard you play for many years, but just didn't realize who you were. But just the past couple years, especially this past year, really kind of got hip to your stuff, the stuff you're doing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and so then that kind of then got me going. Like so many things, you get turned on to something, and then you start digging into people's libraries and stuff like that.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got a really, you've had a really great career. I mean, you're still a young man. Not to pinch Tower Power on that, but you're a relatively young cat. But you've done so much in your career. How did that happen? I mean, how did things happen? How did a guy from England end up being this go-to guy in so many of these great bands that you've been able to be a part of over the past decade or so?
Well, first off, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate the love right there. Growing up in England, I had a dream. I was probably about 15 years old. I heard Maynard Ferguson's Big Bop Nouveau Band at Ronnie Scott's. My dad, who was a trumpet player, we'll talk about my history, but my dad, who was a trumpet player, took me to see Maynard's band at Ronnie Scott's. Big Bop Nouveau Band, and it was Roger Ingram, Walter White, and I think Craig Johnson with the trumpet section with Maynard. And at that moment, I said to myself, "Man, I've got to go to America. I need to study with the cats that these guys are studying with. I need to learn, the jazz from where it came from, like the country that it came from." So at that moment, I said to myself, I need to go to America. And that's when I started looking at Berkeley colleges, different colleges in the United States. And I got a scholarship to Berkeley, came out to Boston. It was a big move from my small town in a small city in England called Norwich. It was a bit of a big move. Left my family, left everybody. My brother was still with my mom and dad at the time, and came out here to the United States to try and follow my dream and be around what I considered the people that were creating this art form, jazz, and the trumpet players that I looked up to. Was just, they were all here. So at that point, I was lucky to get a scholarship to Berkeley. I moved out to Boston and studied there for 4 years. And, we all really, at that time, that college time in our life, we start realizing, oh, we've got to study, we've got to practice, we really got to get into practicing too. So I think that work ethic, my dad was a trumpet player, so he kind of put that work ethic in me about practicing all the time. I was always practicing from an early age. But that work ethic in college where you realize, okay, I've got to start shedding because the person next to me sounds amazing in that practice room. The person this side of me sounds amazing. So that work ethic, I think in college, if you can hold on to that, build on that, and take that forward in life, that's how I feel enables you to keep growing as a musician and as a trumpet player.
Yeah.
And that helps you get to hopefully some good places in life later on.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that you were willing to leave the comfort of your home, the place that you knew, and
Right.
not just like go 100 or 200 miles away to the to a university, but to actually go to a different country, and to do that. That says a lot, because I feel like sometimes people are too willing to compromise on their dreams because it pushes them outside of their comfort zone. And it seems like you have that attitude of, if I want to do this, and I gotta go where it's happening. I've got to be with the big fish. I can't just stay here and be comfortable, and you threw yourself right into the mix of things. So that's definitely a great attribute to have. So at Berkley, like, who are some of the cats that were there when you were going to school?
Actually, we had an amazing cast of characters at Berkeley at that time. I was there from 91 to 95, and we had some of the most amazing drummers there at the time when I was there. Antonio Sanchez was there when I was there. Also, John Blackwell, drummer for Prince.
Okay.
Also, Nathaniel Morton, he was there, great drummer. He plays on the Voice right now. He's the drummer for the Voice TV show in LA. Saxophone player, Teodros Avery, Christopher Holliday, both great jazz saxophone players. Trumpet players, Justin Mullins was there while I was there. He's a great trumpet player in New York here, works a lot. Also, bass player Matt Garrison was there. Jimmy Garrison's son, phenomenal. We had just a great cast of people there at this time. But just going back to what you said before, like, it really about coming back into coming out here to study and to make that jump. It's about, I think, just in life in general, it's about pushing yourself to be just to be in the most, to study and just to grow as much as possible. It's like, put yourself in a place where you can grow from your surroundings, the people you're around. It's like trying to be on stage with as great musicians as possible, because you're going to learn from them. You're going to take something away from that. It's always, in my opinion, it's always best to be the weakest link on stage and try and grow and raise your level, raise your bar, to be around the people that you're around on stage.
Right. That's absolutely 100% spot on.
It's not comfortable, mind you. It puts you out of your comfort zone, but it definitely, I think you have the most growth when you're around people that push you.
Yeah, and that is, like, for me, I feel like I've made the most progress in my life, regardless of what it is, whether it's music or business or anything else. It's like being around people who challenge me. I love being that. I love being the dumbest guy in the room. I love being the worst player in the room, because then I kind of step. Not only do I step my game up, because I know I have to, but it's keeping my eyes and ears and mind open, because there's so many lessons that you're able to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, a friend of mine, he's a trumpet player as well, but yeah, he was in school. He went to Berkeley, and he was there at the same time that Roy Hargrove was.
Right.
And he talks about, like, it's like, going up there and okay, I feel pretty good about myself, and it's like, okay, all right, well, time to hit the shed. So those are those really great inspirations. You either can, if your ego gets in the way and you hear somebody that's better than you, then it's real easy to then actually to quit. I know a lot of people that have done that. It's like, there's like, well, I'm not as good as that guy, and so that they just they chuck it. And then other people, it's the inspiration. to go. So that's super. I think that's super
Key.
critical.
Yeah, that's the key is the way that you interpret it. The way that you interpret hearing somebody great. If you hear somebody great and fear comes up, I think that's the wrong reaction. To me, it's like you should be inspired. I try and get inspired by hearing great people to elevate myself, not to be, you know, we can always be like, whoa, that was incredible. That guy played. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
How did he approach this? What was it he was playing there? And try and figure it out to maybe add something to your own playing, your own vocabulary.
Yeah.
I think it's all the perception on how you, in the end, how you interpret that. If you interpret it with fear or you interpret it with like, okay, I want to know what that was, or I want to add that into my own playing.
Yeah. Well, actually, and I want to get back later to how you got involved with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, but that actually is a really good segue into something because I've seen a couple of videos recently of you and Ravi Best,
Yeah.
doing some trades on the Blood, Sweat, and Tears show, and you're a great player. And Ravi, he's no slouch. I mean, he is a damn fine player.
Yeah,
And
great player, great dude.
yeah, and to see you two and listen to you two, and it's like I get the impression that every night when you guys do that, that you're kind of pushing each other a little bit. It's like, okay, last night was good, but I'm gonna bring a little heat here, and it's feeding off of each other, not trying to show each other up, but like trying to push each other to take it just a little bit further and to really test your abilities as a player in that positive way. Am I reading that correctly?
It certainly feels like that on stage. Especially, I mean, all the trumpet players that I think I've had a chance to play with in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that moment we get to go out there, I don't think it's usually not ego based. It's usually, let's have some fun, play some music, and trade off each other. Like a lot of the times someone will start his solo with the phrase that the last person just played, or someone like recently Ravi and me have been going backwards where he would quote a tune and I'd quote a tune, and like that, just like a 2-bar thing in it. And like we went through the stage of quoting Freddie Hubbard tunes in like the first part of just like a bar of it or 2 bars of it backwards and forwards, So there was that kind of thing, like having that conversation with each other and then kind of seeing what direction it goes and then building it up, building the energy up, and then going into the upper register at the end. I mean, I think that's just kind of, I mean, to me, when I've watched some of my favorite trumpet players playing, with each other, it seems like they're inspiring each other, It seems like they're trying to push each other to that next level. And you hear just from the creative side, also the range side, it's what's great about the trumpet. We can, go up into the upper register and have a little battle up there, but also in the low register, you've got this, the lines you can do, or the harmonic things you can do to like kind of explore new avenues together. And then there was a thing we did recently with Ravi. I mean, we both went into the same Freddie Hubbard bird-like kind of. There was a couple of phrases from the bird-like solo which we hadn't even talked about until after the gig, and we're like, oh, you quoted that from bird-like, and that kind of thing. We both had the same, we'd both done the same homework, studying the same kind of trumpet lineage, and focused on this one bird-like solo that we had both checked out. And I think that having that kind of thing pop out from another player who's standing next to you, they're like, oh, this guy's been listening and checking out the same stuff I have, having that connection with them, that's inspiring. It's like having something in common with someone that is completely, it's not life related, it's just totally trumpet music related. Right. It's like a very tiny little category of something that you have that in common with this person. That's so. Yeah, we've been having a great time with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I mean, there's not many gigs out there where you get a chance to. I mean, basically the show stops, comes down to a vamp, and we get to go out there and just blow, and just play. And there's not many gigs out there right now where you have an opportunity to do that.
Mhm.
Everyone in the band actually has a moment on the stage in the gig where they have their moment to do their thing.
Yeah.
But it's a fun experience right now. The band is great. The musicianship is fantastic. We've got a whole bunch of new stuff we do as well. If you haven't seen the show in the last, 5 years, no, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's definitely a new experience now. We still do all the hits. We've got a great lead singer at the front, fronting the band. It's a really, really good, fun situation.
Well, I was hoping I was going to be able to catch you guys as you were swinging down like through Rehoboth and stuff like that, but that didn't work out for me for various reasons. But yeah, I definitely want to catch a show. But you know, with a band like that that has such history, I mean, not just in the general world of music, but specifically for trumpet players. And when you go back to the original days of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and you know that music, that horn section, really kind of it was really important in the formation of the placement of horns in pop music. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago. Those that to me are like the quintessential, and then of course obviously Earth, Wind, and Fire, and bands like that.
And
But
like to me, those four
yeah,
bands were
yeah,
like they were the ones that to me like basically brought horns into the popular music. I think the slight differences between all those bands is the slight, the variations of how that is. I think BS&T out of all of those has more of a jazz influence.
mhm,
So like the horn section kind of came from slightly more of a jazz background
right,
concept, and the writing and the soloing in the tunes a little looser, some more soloing is happening, with the BS&T stuff. But all four of those bands are key, I think, for bringing horns into popular music back in that time. Um, yeah, but for me, BS&T has that. We still have that thing where there's sections that are open. It's just like, okay, this is open, play now, and it's like that doesn't happen so much, in many forms of music right now.
exactly. But I mean, I can't. I can just imagine myself being there and feeling, the ghost of Lou Soloff looking over my shoulder and just feeling that kind of pressure. So do you feel like, with upholding this tradition, this lineage of music, do you feel like there's maybe a little different pressure on you as a trumpet player in this gig as opposed to, like the John Mayer gig or, Dinah Ross or something like that, where it's more of a support as opposed to with BS&T where the horns are an integral part of the music?
I mean, obviously, I grew up listening to this music. This was like some stuff that I've listened to from an early age, and obviously, Lou Soloff is a trumpet hero to most of us. He's a legend, and obviously, you had Randy Brecker that was in the band at the beginning too. The horn lineage of this band is so high. I mean, you've had the who's who has come through this band. So yes, as far as the level of I'm not going to say the word stress. It's not the level of stress, but the level of, you expect what's expected of the band is the horn section is expected to bring it every single night. And that's one thing that I actually feel is great about this band is that it's not a band with a horn section. It's like the horn section is part of the unit. When we set up, we're like same exactly where the guitars are, the side of the stage. It's not like the horn section's in the back and we're wearing black, and it's not that at all. We're an intricate part of the actual show. The music, I mean, it demands that. The horns are a huge part of the music. So the show itself, it's like the horn section, we're coming out here doing this, featured on basically all the tunes we play on, the horn section does, but there's somewhere we go out and just the two of us, maybe trumpet and sax do something, or the whole horn section goes out and does something in the middle of a song. So it's really it's not in any way thought of as a horn section like in backing part of the band. It's like it's full on
Yeah.
one of the stage, huge part of the band. That's what it is. It's part of the show. So
Yeah.
we feel equal, which is it's a good feeling. But the thing is, the music is that's what it entails. It entails us up there. That's what it's built around that.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier that your dad was a trumpet player, and that Maynard concert, like so many of us, I think that seems to be one of the most common responses to people. Like when you say, like, well, what was the one concert that you saw, the one person that you listened to that kind of made you go, oh man, I really want to do this. And Maynard is one of those cats, that really kind of changes your perspective on trumpet. But who are some of the other people that influenced you in your earlier years of development, and maybe even who are some of the people now that you're listening to, they're going, man, this is really some cool stuff, and I need to start digging in deeper into this.
So I've always grown up. I've been a huge. Oh, let's start with my dad. So my dad was a trumpet player. He actually in the 50s, like 1958, he would actually he worked on the Queen Mary cruise ship that went between London and New York. So
Right.
he played in one of the small quintets in there. So he would travel backwards and forwards to New York in the 50s. 1958 was his main year he was on the boat. So he got to see everybody on 52nd Street in New York. He saw Bird, he saw Dizzy, he saw Miles, he saw Maynard's band, Buddy Rich. He saw everybody here in New York every time he'd come here. And he'd pick up a horn as well, go back with a horn. Like he got a couple of Martin committees in the 50s here. He got a great constellation. So that was like his favorite years of his life were that, because he got to see his heroes plus, travel as well. So my dad was his influences, who he loved, who made him pick up the trumpet. First was Harry James. He heard Harry James, and then he got onto Dizzy Gillespie and then Chet Baker. So those three were like his main influences. And that music was always on in our house growing up. So Elliot and myself, growing up, we were always around, big band music, Stan Kenton, Dizzy Gillespie. Like my dad had this still. There's a collection at my mom's house now of his 78 records, 78s, and there's he's got 150 78s from back in the day of all that early Dizzy stuff, and Chet Baker and Harry James. So those were his influence. That's who I heard growing up, until suddenly I think my dad, he bought me one Christmas time, he bought me like a Best of Trumpet cassette. And that's when I first heard Clifford Brown.
Mm.
And then also there was Freddie Hubbard on there too, but I wasn't ready for Freddie yet. I wasn't. So I needed a minute to get there. But Clifford was like, oh, who's this man? His articulation and his lines. So in my early teens, then I kind of got into Clifford Brown a little more. And then as I got into college, I then really got into Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw, really started, discovering the whole lineage of the trumpet. And I think at that point, I'd always been a Maynard fan, I'd always been into Maynard. But I really, I think I understood that it doesn't happen on many other instruments, but there's two very distinct paths with the trumpet. A lot of guys either go down the lead trumpet path or they go down the creative soloist path.
Mm-hmm.
And it's divided, and it doesn't happen with many instruments, but trumpet is one of them that it happens, where you kind of go between one direction or the other at a certain point. And a lot of the time the creative players don't have the chops to play lead, and a lot of the times the lead players aren't interested in being creative.
Right.
So there's this kind of divide on the instrument, and the thing is, the trumpet is so physical, as we know. It takes so much just to maintain one of those aspects that we only have a certain amount of time in the day to focus on something. So either focusing on the lead stuff or focusing on the creative side, soloing side, harmonic, jazz knowledge, all of that. So I've always loved both. I've always felt like I've been influenced by both. I love like those early Maynard records. I love Chet Baker. I love Woody Shaw. You know, I love Tom Harrell. I mean, I think all of those together, and also trying to think about how you could try and be able to do all of those together and not divide yourself into either one or the other, I think is an important aspect of being a trumpet player today.
Yeah.
I think we are expected to be able to do whatever is put in front of us. And, you know, I think having those influences and not having the mindset of, okay, I'm just going to do this or I'm just going to do that. I think being open to be able to try and keep both sides of the trumpet, you know, on an equal kind of level where, okay, because a lot of us, we might go like this or like this, but trying to keep both of them on a very equal par, I think is important to be able to work, you know, and also express yourself. Like if I only had an octave and a half range, you know, I wouldn't be able to say what I want to say as a creative player, you know. So I think it's important to keep both halves. And that's when I teach too, that's one thing I think is really important. I always divide the lesson into two halves. We have creative improvisational half, and then we have trumpet half. And I think if we don't do both of those, one of them will suffer. And then if one of them suffers, both of them suffer. So I think it's important to really, to try and be able to do both, because in the end, it's about music, and we want to be able to create music when we want to, with as much range flexibility that we can have to do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, that you brought up a really great point there. And yeah, I've had a number of people talk about this. Bobby Shue was really big on this. It's, you know, talking about like, you know, the best lead players are also really good jazz players. You know, in terms of like the ability to sit in the section and to drive a section in a big band, particularly to swing and things like that. The people that are the best at doing that can do both. They can play the high notes. They can improvise, because then that gives you the technical facility to play the entire range of the instrument. But at the same time, it also gives you the feel that and the emotional connection to the music that you get as you're saying, like as a creative. And I think even like with legit players, I think that's sometimes the thing that so many are missing. You know, they've got all the technique in the world, but the soul is missing sometimes. And I think that when you tap into improvisation, you know, you don't necessarily have to be able to play blazing bebop, but when you tap into that ability to freely emote through your instrument, then that makes everything sound so much more musical, and it connects with other people. So I really want to dive into that a little bit more in terms of like your approach to trumpet pedagogy, because you are a trumpet teacher at Northwestern, great Big Ten school. I give you props for that. Not much of a football program there, but you know, we'll forgive you for that.
Well, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I'm an Ohio State
Go
alumni.
Wildcats.
But cool colors. I love purple.
But back there, that's good.
Yeah, so you got it.
You're on it, man. You're on it.
But in terms of the way you approach pedagogy, you know, and it's specifically about the creative side, what are some of the techniques that you use to elicit that from players? Because I think so many people are afraid of improvising, just like so many people are afraid of public speaking. You know, how do you help people to do that, to start to, you know, to feel comfortable with expressing their ideas?
Well, I think it's like anything. It's like you have to learn the language. I think it's important to go through the trumpet lineage and listen and transcribe people's solos and language. Now, not for the sake of taking their lick and playing this lick here and that kind of thing, but just to understand. I'm a huge advocate of transcribing, but not for the reason of learning licks, but to understand concepts, to understand a concept of what an improviser is doing, certain way that he approaches certain chord patterns or 2-5-1s, what he's thinking over that. I think it's important to not say, oh, okay, I learned this lick, I'm going to place this lick number 27 in this part of my solo tonight. That to me is not improvising. That's preconceived, premeditated. That's not being in the moment, creating music. That's not, to me, what that's about. So, but learning the language and understanding, okay, this is how this person, this trumpet player, this is how he thinks harmonically over these changes, and figuring that out, and then taking that concept, and now you thinking the same way and thinking harmonically a certain way over some changes. Like that, to me, is that it's like giving you the formula for you to be creative in the style of whoever we're looking at. So going through the whole trumpet lineage is like that. I think it's important to do that, to learn the language, transcribe, and figure out and get the feelings of way certain players play. And figure out what it is that made them who they are. Because everyone has that certain twist that they did that made them who they are. So I think it's important to study that. I think it's important to know what it is about each player as we go through the lineage, and then take that and be able to use it and add yourself and your own creativity to that. So it's like learning any language. If you want to learn French or German, you've got to learn the vocabulary first, but then you're not going to go and say someone else's speech or someone else's sentences. You want to say your own.
Right.
So that, but you need those tools to be able to say that. But in the end, it's about it, and what I think is important is about finding the concepts for each player, the way that they thought and the way they approached things, and then taking those concepts and using them yourself to be you, but you can be influenced by certain harmonic things that they would do.
Yeah. And I wish I had known that when I was younger. That's one of the things that if I could go back and change anything about my earlier development and playing, that would be one of the things that I would do, which is do more transcriptions, because I had the wrong idea about transcriptions. I always thought it was like, okay, well, you learn someone's solo and then learning their licks basically, which I immediately was like, well, why would I want to do that if improvising is creating your own, expressing your own thoughts? So I didn't understand that at an early age, and like I said, I would change it if I could, but one of the things that later on, as I started to understand more what it was about, it's like listening to you mentioned one of my favorite players of all time, Woody Shaw, like listening to Woody and how his note choices, like Woody and Miles, I thought were really great in terms of note choices.
Right.
Woody and his use of the sixth of a chord, in which you're usually told never play the sixth, it sounds bad. But then you listen to Woody and how he would stick those sixths in, and it's like, wow, that is such a really unique sound in a melodic construction, and how it creates this really beautiful tension that he would then resolve, especially like on his more melodic flugelhorn kind of playing. It's like, wow. And Miles, Miles is never going to play the predicted note, but it's how he chose to place whether the extensions on a chord, and getting that the idea, the feeling that those kind of notes give you, and then incorporating that in your playing. I think those are just the real cool ideas, and it allows you to be that unique person.
Correct. Yeah. Like also understanding how somebody's trumpet language, their language has changed from one person to the next, and what it is that's changed in that language, and they're improvising. Like Woody Shaw, uses a lot of force and a lot of fifths in his playing,
Right.
in his improvising. Before that, I mean, if you listen to like Clifford Brown, it's all minor thirds. A lot of the bebop lines are all more connected, third, minor thirds. So suddenly now the intervals are getting bigger. That's why Woody sounds, I mean, he's influenced by Coltrane. And so it's like those larger intervals, fourths and fifths, we weren't used to hearing those on the trumpet. So now you hear that, and that's like, oh, okay, why does it sound different? Because those larger intervals we're not used to hearing, and also his concept on what chords he's superimposing over other chords as well, is what gave him his sound. You know, like understanding those things and being able to then, okay, so now I understand it. What do I practice? What do I practice to get those in my playing? So practicing things with more fourths and more fifths in them, you know, exercises with fourths and fifths, just so you get that sound in your ear and you can start thinking like that. Because in like I said, the earlier language with bebop tends to be a lot closer intervals, minor thirds, is as we're going through the changes like this, and not thinking horizontally through the changes, as you know, as it gets into like post bop and more kind of modal stuff. Now it's suddenly we're thinking vertically through the changes. We're thinking, okay, let's take a motif, a small little 4-note pattern, ba-didn't-da, 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 being able to move that around. It's changing the thinking. The language is changing. So the thinking of improvising is now not like this way. It's now this way. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah.
So in more modal playing, you're now thinking about, you know, smaller shapes rather than lines. You're thinking about shapes more and just moving them around and creating different things with shapes, and tension too, building tension, playing a half step off and then resolving it, that kind of thing. It's all something that kind of happened in the later lineage of jazz going through the modal era. Like, hear a lot of, you know, saxophone players, piano players, McCoy, and what McCoy is doing, what Train is doing, you know, that kind of thing. And this is another thing too, like as a trumpet player, don't limit yourself to just listening to trumpet players, because to me, all the great trumpet players that I listen to were influenced by different instruments. They're influenced by everybody. Just because you know, you listen to a piano player of the same era, of a trumpet player from the same era, the language is going to be very different based on the limitations of the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You know, certain things we can do on the trumpet that you know, maybe a piano player can do much easier on the piano than we can on the trumpet. That's why their language sounds different, but it's coming from the same place at the same time period. So they're kind of being, the language is the same, but influenced differently because of the instrument.
Yeah.
So thinking outside that box.
Yeah, and you know what, that's such a cool concept, because you know, granted, this is a trumpet, you know, podcast, but recently I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about Eddie Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, who didn't love Van Halen? And Eddie did so much to change the sound and the approach to guitar and rock and roll music. But his approach to guitar was influenced actually by his piano playing. You know, so when he was soloing, you know, all the hammer on and stuff like that, that was really that was his drawing on his skills that he attained as a piano player, as opposed to a guitar player. And so he just, you know, brought that over, and now that has become kind of stock in the guitar world.
Oh, well,
yeah. So, you know, that's such a cool thing. It's like, well, the only way that you're going to sometimes to raise the level or to evolve a specific art form is not necessarily just through refining the techniques that are already there, the approaches that are already there. It's drawing those outside sources.
Exactly, yeah. Like Alan Holdsworth, guitar player too.
Oh, I love Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah, I mean, when you read his book or you read his life story, he talks about not wanting to play guitar at all. He wanted a saxophone because he heard Coltrane and was like, that's what I want to do. But then took that whole Coltrane concept and brought it to the guitar, playing legato. Nobody played legato before him. I mean, the whole legato thing on guitar. So, and his harmonic thing is so deep and technically so deep too. So like how he was influenced from a saxophone player to play guitar and stretch the limits of the guitar, same way, like you said, Eddie was. I mean, to me, that's how that's how our instrument progresses and has progressed. It's because it's influenced by something not the norm and makes that person stand out and be something slightly different, you know.
Yeah. All the things you can do with those three valves. It's amazing.
And that, you know, isn't that such a backwards concept? Like when someone says to you, "Oh, you've only got 3 buttons." It's like, no, 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 no. I have to do with these 3 buttons the same that they have to do with all of that. They've got all the keys in front of them. I've got to do all the same with just 3. It's backwards.
Yeah.
This is way harder.
Yep. Yeah. That's what got me playing trumpet. That misconception that 3 would be easy.
It's easier, exactly. We have to spread that. We have to spread those words.
Exactly. So let's kind of go back to the BS&T world a little bit. How did you end up getting that gig? And you know, you're the MD for the show as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been on that for a minute or two. So what got
probably about 5-6 years at this point. I subbed a couple of times on the band, and then I think they had a personnel change, and they called me in to like I did about maybe 2 or 3 months regularly, and it just came a regular thing after that. I mean, I didn't technically. I didn't get the gig until I'd probably been playing with the band probably about 6 months straight solid. But I mean, I was subbing pretty much on every gig at that point. But I think you just start with subbing, you know, you sub for somebody here or there. And then if they like your playing, they like your attitude. I think with any gig, there's a lot. It's not always just about the playing. It's about, are you on time? Are you reliable? You know, that kind of thing. And if all of those boxes check, I think then you get the opportunity to come back and see if you're a good fit, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, actually, that now is going to take us down another little rabbit hole here, because I'm a firm believer. My high school band director who told me, you know, that your talent will get you the gig, your personality will keep the gig, and I kind of live by that.
Yeah.
And as someone who, you know, with you being an educator, you know, working with young up and coming trumpet players, is that something that you do? I mean, not just helping them to learn to navigate the horn, but do you help them to navigate the social skills that are necessary to become successful in the world of professional music? Is that something that you offer them in terms of guidance and mentoring? And you know, even I know people have it as part of their curriculum. So how do you do that? And you know, what are the kind of things that you present to your students to help them in this process?
Well, I think the very things I just said are really important. Outside, obviously, there's a ton of great players out there. I think you've still got to be you've got to have the other stuff together too to be able to stay in a gig. Being a good guy, trying to be a good person, doing the right thing, I think is important. I think being on time is important. I think being able to travel well and not have too many demands on traveling. I know some people that, you know, some people are amazing players. They don't like to travel. They don't travel well. I mean, that's something that, you know, if we're gonna go for a gig where we have to travel a lot, we have to be prepared to travel and not, you know, get upset by the travel. So I think there's a bunch of things. I try and teach all my students that, you know, make as many friends as you can, because that's how, you know, friendships are how you get gigs. Friendships are how you keep gigs. It's about, you know, trying to have a good network of good friends and good people around you, I think. So I think that's kind of the approach that I go with my students, and obviously be over prepared for a gig. When you get called for a gig, to me, first off, if you get called for a gig, you're lucky, because you should think of it of like, okay, I'm lucky I'm getting called for this gig. Because there's, like I said, there's tons of musicians out there, and trumpet players out there. So with that, you should do your homework. You should be prepared for the gig. Don't show up to the gig unprepared, because being unprepared, I think, is disrespectful to not only the music, it's also disrespectful to the people you're playing with. And I think that's one thing that through the years, I now have got to a point where I almost memorize a gig, learn it before I get to it. If I have the opportunity to do that, and I have the time to do that, just so that it sits in me and I'm so comfortable when I get to the gig, I don't have to worry about certain things. And I know I play my best when I am comfortable and not in a situation of stress or worrying about something. It's like the Broadway show mentality. When you go to do a Broadway show, you're given one opportunity really to go in and do it. And you sit at home and you have conductor videos, you have audio, and you have the book that you go through, and you sit and you practice it. And if you're smart, you'll go through that book once, twice a day, a week, 2 weeks going up to the 2 weeks going up to the show. So you're really comfortable in playing it. And when you get to the show, you have that one opportunity to play it. If you do a good job, you'll get asked back. If you don't, you won't. So that's the reality of it. So getting the opportunity itself is hard in the first place. So don't take it for granted, and don't think. I just think show it some respect, show the music some respect, and be as well prepared as possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. That's absolutely solid. And it got me to thinking about something. I know that, every trumpet player has a warm up that they use. But I think a lot of times people only focus on the mechanical side of the warm up. So they have their physical rituals to go through. But I think especially when you're in the live performance thing, when you're in a venue, when you're especially at a gig like you have right now with BS&T and some of the other stuff that you've done that are fairly high profile gigs, I think that there also has to be a level of mental preparation that you go through. So do you have like kind of a go-to process that you apply to get yourself mentally and emotionally ready to hit the stage, not just, getting your chops going?
I mean, this is a really good question, because the majority of the time we just do physical warm-ups. We don't do any mental warm-ups or creative warm-ups. How many times have we got to, say, a big band gig, and we've warmed up, we've warmed our chops up, we've warmed, everything's feeling good, and then we've got 16 bars to play, and it's like, go, and then boom, it's over. It's like, wait a second, you don't even give yourself the opportunity to warm up the creative side of your playing or warm up something. So this is another thing I talk about with my students when we do I have a set like kind of warm-ups that I do just to help myself get from A to B as quickly as possible, so I'm ready to play. But that also entails playing a tune, and also entails playing, like improvising something, whether it's just something small, a blues, but anything just to be creative, just to suddenly, brush out those cobwebs, and think, get to playing something creative on the horn as quickly as possible, so that when I do have to suddenly go on stage now and play, I'm not stuck for ideas. I'm not just suddenly like, I'm warm here, but I'm not warm here. It's like you have to be both. And it's something that we don't, majority of the time, I never used to think about that until I got to that moment of where, I just had a 16 bar solo in the big band. What did I play? I don't even remember what I played, and what was it influenced by, or what? I don't know. I wasn't even thinking about it. It went by so quick. So that, I think it's important to not only warm up this, but also think about and maybe play something creative every day as well as a warm up too, to warm up your creativity and get something flowing to help when you do have to just hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's solid advice, man. See, that's why I love doing this, man. You get all kinds of great ideas from people. So, and like you say, I think it's one of those things that people don't think about
No.
that often. You know,
I didn't for the longest, but then until suddenly one day I was like, wait a second. Spent all this time warming myself up physically, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say something on the trumpet. I wasn't ready to be creative. I hadn't even thought about being creative until suddenly it was upon me, and it's like, now just play. This is my moment to play. I say, wait a second, my mind is thinking about this. I was worried about this. I couldn't get a cab to the gig, or something. Something is still bothering me that I hadn't let go of before I started playing music. And a lot of the times it's just letting go and just being in the moment,
yeah,
and really like being in the moment, and I like to try somehow to, whatever's happened to me that day, whatever I've been going through that day before I go on stage, have that be a part of my solo that night, be influenced by something, because every day is different. I mean, day has gone like that, but to have each night's performance be influenced by what you went through that day or what you went through that week, have it have some meaning. I think that's also another thing that's important, to kind of let go of things, let
mm,
things out, use that moment to let things out, and to let go of things. So
yeah, that's. I think that's key because, um, with improvising being an expression of your emotions and your intentions and things like that, um, you can play the technically greatest solo in the world, but if you really aren't saying anything, if there's no emotion to it, there's no intention behind it, then it's it's. I think it's so important to have an idea of what you're trying to say, not just play licks.
exactly. To me, my favorite players, my favorite trumpet players, are always guys that play from the heart. You can tell, and what they're playing, it connects to me, and it's like I can feel it. I can feel what they're playing. They still have technical ability. Some of them are still technical geniuses, but their playing comes from this. And it's when, I think, to me, my favorite players are guys that mix this with a bit of this too. So
Yeah,
it's like, it's like if all of those come together, that pathway of like coming from the heart, yeah, with some harmonic knowledge, playing from the heart, harmonic knowledge with good chops and range. That's my favorite
yeah,
style of musician. Someone who can mix that all together.
yeah,
I tend to gravitate towards those players the most.
yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. Yeah, one of my teachers, he talked about the importance of, kind of getting your head in the right space for sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started noticing, like, I have my preferences on what I like to listen to. And so I started to become more deliberate. Like if I'm on my way to a big band gig, then I'm on the drive, I'm listening to, Gordon Goodwin's band, or I'm listening to, Harry Connick recordings. Because, two of my favorite lead trumpet players of currently and somewhat of all time, Wayne Bergeron and Roger Ingram. I
Right.
love those two guys. I love their sound. I like the feel. So I'll listen to that, or I'll, listen to some old Kenton, or things like that. If I'm on my way to playing with an R&B band, I'm gonna sit and listen to T.O.P. or Earth, Wind and Fire, or things like that, to get that sound and that feel in my head. Because I found that, like, if I would do the opposite, if I'm on my way to a big band gig and I'm listening to, Jerry Hay, I'm going to approach it, from that place, which is, I mean, if I could play like Jerry, it'd be great, but it's not the right sound for that gig.
That's that's a great statement right there. That's a great statement, because there's a bunch of things you said in there that are really important. Like, first off, the two lead trumpet players that you mentioned, some of the greatest of all time, why are they working? They're not working because they have high chops. They're working because they're super musical trumpet players. And in the end, it always boils back down to music. That's what we're playing. It's not about high notes. It's about being musical, and they're both musical in the upper register. That's why they're working.
Right.
That's why they're the legends that they are. And also you say like Jerry Hay, Jerry Hay's horn section to me is one of the greatest of all time. But when you say, okay, lead trumpet horn section and lead trumpet big band, very different things conceptually. The way notes are cut off, held, vibratos, no vibratos, short attacks, bite off notes. This is two different concepts too. So you can have someone that's great at A, but doesn't necessarily mean he'll be great at B, that kind of thing. So listening musically too is exactly the same thing. The musical aspect is knowing the difference between those two, like exactly what you said. A big band lead trumpet phrasing, you want to listen to that before you go to a big band because it's going to be different than a horn section phrasing. It might be still the same notes in the same register, but it's going to be attacked. It's going to be played differently. And I think that's one thing that's really important to talk about. Like horn section playing is different than big band playing, and that is something that I try and get into with my students too, and also players that I play with in different musical settings, understanding the difference between those two, understanding the difference between playing in a trumpet section in a big band and a horn section on a pop gig, or it's a different approach, a different way that we play. So I think that's something as well that's important to talk about and distinguish between, and listen to the different sides of those different players and sections and big bands to hear the difference.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And speaking of which, I mean, like with BS&T, there's like you said earlier, that band, the horn section, a little, I don't want to say looser, but definitely more on the jazz side than other sections. But there's a very distinctive kind of energy that you get from, especially if you listen to the early recordings. In your concepts as the MD for that show now, what are, if you had to describe what the sound and the feel of the horn section for Blood, Sweat, and Tears is, as opposed to any other horn section, how would you categorize it? How would you describe it?
I would say that I think now the section right now is we have definitely tightened things up. The section is really tight right now. And I think that cutoffs, breathing together, articulations together, that kind of thing is really important to me as the lead trumpet with that, and making the section tight. That's important to me, those things. The way that we we don't sit on a note, is that we don't want to swell on the note, the sound. I don't want us just to sit on the note and the cutoffs together. Everything is important for the section to sound like a unit. And tuning, obviously. So I think in the history, I think as things nowadays, I think it's important for a section to be tight. I don't want the section to be loose just for the sake of it, or be like, oh, this is how things used to get played, or if they were, so I'd much prefer that we make the performance now as great as we can make it, as good as we have the ability to make it, by being as tight as possible, and the rhythm section as tight as possible. The endings of songs, the beginning of songs, just everything being as on the highest level we can achieve, So I think certain bands, like I think Tower, are renowned for that really, really tight articulation, and that's part of their sound. But I think BS&T has, I think it's gone through stages. Certain songs and certain eras of the band, the section has been super tight, and in other eras it's been a little, maybe a little more jazz influence, like you said. But I think right now we try and bring as much tightness and cleanliness as possible to the section.
Yeah. Well, there's a feeling like with one of my recent interviews with my friend Tyler Yeager. Tyler was talking about the difference between his impression of the difference between the LA sound and the New York sound, and said that New York tends to have a little more of an aggressive approach to music. It's just there's a little more in your face. LA is a little.
It's the weather. It's the weather, man. The weather sucks sometimes, and I think that makes everybody that have some edge in the end. I think, yeah, but I know what you're saying. But it's the same in I think in soloing too. There's a vibe in New York. There's a certain vibe soloing wise, being creative as well. It's just a New York thing where it just has vibe. It just has intensity, and I think that comes from the city. And I think. From living here for so long, I've lived in New York now 25 years. I think that it just becomes a part of who you are and part of just your everyday life. And as a musician, it is part of the New York sound. It's a little more aggressive. It's a little more, I want to say in your face a little bit more. It's a little bit more like, it's something that I've grown to love, and I miss that when I don't hear that sometimes in other people's playing. I like that feeling of like when someone just holds one note, just like with that vibe, that to me is what I hear that in New York. I feel that in New York.
Is that the part of the BS&T sound, the that little New York?
Well, the section is all of us are based out of New York. The horn section is based out of New York and are all New York guys, and I think that's been pretty consistent. We have subs, from all over the country if we need them, guys that have subbed with the band. But I think the majority of the time, since I've been in the band, the section has always been based out of New York. And there's something. It's just it also enables us to rehearse if we need to, enable that kind of thing. But I really think there's a certain vibe though in New York that you get or you hear while you're playing here, or you feel it from here. So it's just having people on the same page,
Yeah,
the same way and hear the same way. That's it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of on the same page, besides your work with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and you also have the Mason Brothers.
Yes, indeed.
You and your brother. What's it like working with your brother?
Well, it's honestly the best. It's the best times I have in my life on stage with him. That's it. Just period. Full stop. We both don't get a chance because of both of our schedules. We don't get a chance to do much of the Mason Brothers Quintet right now. He's been with Jazz at Lincoln Center, went to Marsalis's band. He's been in that for coming on 14 years, I think, at this point. And their travel schedule is, and he's also the trombone teacher at Juilliard. So with those two jobs, he's very, very busy. Plus he's got a little 3-year-old right now, my nephew, who's adorable. So Mason Brothers Quintet we don't do many gigs right now, although I'm looking forward to hopefully doing some more soon. We're definitely writing some more music right now for another record. But getting to play with him, I don't have a strong musical connection with anyone as I do with him. We grew up together. We listened to the same music at the same time. We discovered people at the same time, discovered musicians at the same time. So I'm so close musically with him. And when we get on stage, the thing we enjoy doing more than anything is just improvising together and seeing where it goes, having a conversation and like doing stuff, have it come together. Maybe we'll be in harmonies like this together, then he does something, I do something, we come back and we're together like this. So for me, that's something that's really special. I haven't been able to have that relationship with anything like that with any other musician. No. It's quite a special bond. And plus he is one of the baddest trombone players I've ever heard in my life. So to stand and hear him do what he does next to him, and then be a part of that, create music with him, it's a blessing, absolute blessing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you're saying, when you have that kind of shared sensibility, musical sensibility, then that can lead to some very, very interesting expressions because it is your ability to feed off of each other. It is that natural conversation, and I think sometimes that the people that when you look at like historically, even you can get two really great players and put them together and they'll sound great, but it's a different thing when you have two great players who have some level of common bond, whether it's that they've been friends for life, their family, or they just have that melding of of the mind sort of thing where they feel super super connected. That's when so much magic really really happens, and
Yeah,
it's great.
I've had some of my funnest moments on the stage where I just start giggling because I was like, wait, I can't even believe that just happened right now. Like we play a line together at the same time, just out of nowhere. And you're like, what? But it's some of those magical moments, they happen when you have played with somebody for so long and you kind of know how the other person thinks. And then, just, yeah, it's pretty, it's like I said, it's my funnest moments playing my instrument with my brother. It's awesome, and we hope we're going to do some more of it coming up soon. This next couple of years, record another record and play and tour a little bit more would be fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds great because I would love to hear that. I mean, I would love to see that because I'm sure that it's just the energy would just be palpable. Just to be a part of that would be a great pleasure.
And
So
it's also one thing that I think is important, and this goes back to all the way back to the beginning with playing two trumpets with BS&T as well. I think it's about being a team player, and that's what I feel when I play with my bro, and that's actually how I feel when I play with in a horn section. The same thing. It's always about being a team player and knowing your role and trying to help the other person next to you sound better. If that's your concept and concept of like, okay, we're going to create music now, and I want this guy next to me to play better or feel better or something like that. If you can take that mentality, to me, it's like that's where I have the most fun. And I think, especially in a horn section, like four guys, like trying to keep, trying to help all four guys, all of us help each other, and as a team to play a certain way, and cut offs the same, breathing the same. That's if everyone has a team mentality on that, in the end, the goal, the section itself is going to sound way better. And yeah, it's I think having that team mentality rather than a single mentality is better in music.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. All right. Well, we've got a few segments that we need to get through before I can let you go. The first one is brought to us by my good friend Michael Berkley by Berkley Microphones. It's Sound Off. And in Sound Off, what I'm going to do is I want to talk about your approach to developing the right kind of sound for the job. Particularly, as we were talking about BS&T a lot, and I think that's one of the things. Most of us that are playing, I think the majority of gigs are actually commercial gigs. Bar bands, cover bands, things like that. And there's a certain kind of sound that you need for that kind of gig. And so, what are some of the things that you suggest people do in terms of developing the right kind of sound for a horn section as opposed to playing in a big band thing?
Well, I think equipment is a huge, having the right equipment for the job that you're going to go to is a huge important thing to have. The right trumpet and the right mouthpiece for the job that you're going to do. I stay on the same exactly. I play GR mouthpieces, and I love their mouthpieces, and I have exactly the same cup diameter of 3 different mouthpieces, but I switch with the different depths depending on the sound that I need. It's about, I think, having the correct sound for the situation that you're in. Also, if I can for a second, I'll show you this. This is BAC Maverick trumpet that I helped design with BAC. And the concept of this horn was that I wanted a horn that I could change from being dark to bright. So I can play in a jazz quintet and then have the same horn and play lead in BS&T on it. So the concept was, let's come up with a horn that we can change and manipulate the sound on, not the way it feels, but keep the way it feels the same, but let's change the sound. So we came up with the Maverick model of over at BAC in Kansas City, and we have interchangeable lead pipes here inside the sleeve here, unscrewable lead pipes, where we keep the dimensions the same, so the horn sound feels the same, sorry, but the lead pipe, the lead setup is made of nickel silver lead pipe, and then also change out the tuning slide, nickel silver tuning slide. So it's super bright and responsive, the horn right now. You put your lead mouthpiece in here and it sounds really bright. Now, then over here I have copper. This is a copper lead pipe. I'll put the copper lead pipe into the horn with the copper tuning slide. Copper tuning slide right here changes the horn drastically now to a much darker sound. So I think having the idea of matching the right sound for the gig is important. I think gone are the days where one person plays the same mouthpiece and the same trumpet on everything they do. I don't think that, because with the demand on us to do so much nowadays is much greater than it was. I don't think that's feasible anymore. I think we have to have and always think about the right equipment for the job that we're going to.
Yeah.
So if you're going to a church gig, you're going to play a different horn, different setup than you are going to play lead in a big band or a horn section. Or if you're going to play a jazz quintet gig, you're going to play a different setup, purely based on the sound and how you want the horn to sound and yourself to sound. You know, so that was the concept with the BAC Maverick, was to have a trumpet that I used to play. I played a Taylor trumpet for my jazz gigs, and then I'd have a Bobby Shoe Z, both great horns. And I just switched between the two, but I couldn't take both horns on the road with me and a flugelhorn. It just became, so I said, I need a trumpet that I can do both and switch the actual sound of it with. So that's what we ended up coming up with in Kansas City with BAC. But so that, to answer your question, I think it's important to have the right equipment for the right gig. Bottom line, that's it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, and it actually is the perfect segue into the next segment, which is our geared up segment, where it is actually talking about the gear. So you got ahead of me on this, but that's okay. And this is brought to us by Vincent Pieces, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. If you want to check them out, make sure you use the code Trumpet Gurus 21 and you get 10% off your purchase. So good looking out for you. But in terms of gear, and you already talked about your design and what you're using. But I think, you know, a lot of times people don't know how to go through these kind of processes to pick the right gear. So what's some advice that you could give people on, you know, deciding how to go through the process of picking the gear that's going to give them the right sound they need?
Well, I think, first off, I don't like to change two things at once. I think you should always try and have some kind of, when you're looking for a new mouthpiece or a new horn, I think you should do one or the other at the same time, so you have some kind of continuous, so something that you can feels the same and something that you can relate to rather than changing both. But I would always, you know, mouthpiece I think is really important for feel and feeling how certain registers and notes feel on the horn. I think the horn is really important for sound, and the valve block is really important to me as a trumpet player. I like to feel, the valve block has to feel a certain way that I can get around on it. And then Also, obviously the horn with the sound of it, the actual tone of the horn is really important. But I think mouthpiece is more about comfortability, and then but having like I said, I've always switched between mouthpieces, but just the depths are different. The cup depths are different, and maybe the back bore or the throat is different, just depending on what sound I need for the gig. If I need a dark trumpet sound, I usually have a deeper cup. If I have to play lead on something, I usually have a shallower cup with different back bore or throat size, just so that gets that lead sizzle sound that you need on the gig. And then same with the horn. I've always gone with like a medium large setup. I've played larges. I had an MF horn, Holton MF horn for a while, and that was a big boy right there.
Yeah.
It's a great horn, but that's a big boy. And then I've had other horns that are like a horn that was a medium bore, and it just felt too tight for me. So I've always kind of sat in the middle on medium large, and I think it's really about sound and how you feel. And a lot of the times, you can try a trumpet in the practice room, you can try it in the store, and it feels amazing. And then 5 minutes into the gig, you're like, uh-oh. So it's not till a gig that you really know. I feel that you really know with a horn. So it's always about, okay, can I try this horn on a gig to see how it feels before I commit to it?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty important too. And a lot of the stores, a lot of great stores nowadays, they'll let you have a horn for a week or something like that to try it out before you commit to it, especially the prices they're at right now too. But I think it's not till you get on the gig until you realize, okay, this is good for me or it's not good for me, this horn. But I think pretty safe, if you're around about a 5C or a 3C on the trumpet, I think that's a pretty safe place to be. And I think a medium large horn is pretty safe to be too.
Yeah. So with your students, when you get new students at your college and you're kind of helping them through their processes, do you kind of have a protocol that you give them for how to look at doing any kind of gear changes?
I think everyone is different, and it's important to respect that everyone's different. Everyone's jaw is different. Everyone's lips are different. The makeup is different of our faces and our nasal cavity. Everything is different. So something that feels good to me is not necessarily going to feel good to the guy next to me. And I think it's important that we can diagnose what is good and what is not for ourselves, and what feels good and what maybe with the help of somebody else, what sounds good. Oh, hey, how does this sound, this mouthpiece thing? But we're the only ones that know how it feels. So I think usually I don't like to impose what I have or what I do on other people, on my students, but I can say this is what I've found through the years. I've gravitated towards this because I feel this works well as a good way to think about things. But I do suggest to them always having a 2 mouthpiece setup if they have to do, and I encourage them to do both, to play lead and to also be soloists and be creative on the instrument. So I do encourage that. I encourage a 2 mouthpiece setup where you can do, A on one and B on the other. So, but as far as what size and what they feel comfortable with and what horn, I leave that up to them. But if they want advice or can I try this? Can I try that? That's usually the best thing, is just trying as much stuff as possible.
Yeah.
Get a chance to actually try a horn, you'll know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something about valve block, and you're the first person who has ever mentioned valve blocks on this show. So
Okay.
When you're talking about what you're looking for in a valve block, I mean, what is it specifically that you're focusing in on?
There's a certain feel for valves that I like. When I used to switch between the Taylor and the Yamaha, the biggest difference, although they're completely different style horns, and one is made of I want to say 1 millimeter thick red brass, and the other one is a Yamaha, probably 0.5 mil, 0.5 mil gold brass. the horns are made of completely different materials. The thing that I had the most trouble with switching between those horns was the valve blocks, because they were just very different. One's not better than the other, but they just were very different in their feel. So when I would always practice and shed on my jazz horn and my deep mouthpiece, because then I felt if I went to a lighter horn or a lead mouthpiece, things felt easier. But I would always shed on the hardest equipment to shed on, so that I kept my stamina and my playing at a certain level where I felt comfortable with it, and then could move it to the lighter equipment. But for me, the valve blocks were just so different in the way that the valves were. One had heavy caps, one had light caps. So for me, I wanted to not have to switch between those two valve blocks with just one horn. So that was important with the Maverick, the BAC Maverick. It was like, I just want one horn with the same valve block that I'm used to, that we can then change the sound on it like that. But so for me, the valve block, it's about how the spring setup, the tension of it, how each valve feels. It has to be consistent. It has to have a certain resistance to it. I always have the rubber stops in it too, because I had the felt ones. To me, they move. You can't get a good valve alignment with the felt ones. I think you have to have rubber in there so it stops at a certain point, and then when the valves get aligned, there will always be that. The felt, it dips a little more after a little amount of time. It gets squishy, so your valve alignment goes out. And so the feel, every valve block is different, but there's, I find the ones that I like, and we found a good valve block for this horn to build it around, base it around, and we signed off on this valve block. And for me, that's as a soloist, it's like that's my tongue and my fingers have to be connected. They have to be in line with each other. So if the valve block's off or the valves are off, that connection is much harder to deal with. So,
yeah. Well, cool. That's great information. So, check your valve blocks, people. All right.
Switch them out. You can't switch them out.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got one last segment to get through. This is our Robinson's Remedy rapid fire round. This is a series of questions that bounce kind of all over the place, and we just need your quickest response to these questions. So, Brad, are you ready for this?
All right, let's go.
Let's do this. All right. Starting out with this one, who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
Oh, probably my brother, trombone player.
Yeah, okay, that's good enough.
I'll give you somebody else. Valentino Rossi, greatest motorcyclist of all time, Italian. He just retired this year too, but that's another.
Okay, that's good. All right, what's your favorite book?
It's probably Miles's autobiography.
I love that book.
Yeah.
I was going to say maybe it's Flexus. I see that over your shoulder there.
Oh, yes, right there.
What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Worst? Oh boy. I don't know. I've seen some pretty bad ones recently. I can tell you one of my favorites. I can switch the question on you.
All right. Well, what's your favorite?
One of my favorites, Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Classic.
That is absolutely a classic.
I've seen a lot of bad ones recently, though.
Yeah. During COVID, I think there's been an outbreak of bad movies as well. So, and there's nothing you can do about it. Just sit there and watch them. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
A pilot.
Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Tequila on the rocks.
Blanco, Reposado.
Reposado, actually. I really like the George Clooney one right now, the Casamigos.
Casamigos, yeah, that is a good one.
Reposado, couple of ice cubes after a gig.
Yeah, I think that Casamigos Reposado is. I like it better than the Añejo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do too, and I think there's a shortage of it right now. So get your bottles while you can. Are
you responsible for that shortage?
I am not, no. But I will buy an extra one next time.
I've noticed that myself. I have a hard time finding decent tequila anymore in the store. So
I think it's become popular. I like that, especially during these times too. I feel it's a lot of I like whiskey for a while. I like that. Like a good whiskey, a Japanese whiskey like Yamazaki or something like that, or Tika, really good. But I just found that um, I ended up with more heartburn. It was very acidic, so tequila to me is a little less damaging.
Has the probiotics in it. That's why.
Yeah.
See, it's good for you. You could have a dinner party and invite any three living people. Any three people on the face of the earth right now could come to your party. Who would you want to invite?
Well, I definitely, this would go back to the question before. Valentino Rossi would be sitting at the table. Um, hmm, I don't know who else. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess, who would you have?
Who would I have? Man,
Yeah.
if I were able to invite any three people right now, I would have Quincy Jones,
Oh, yes, yeah.
the Dalai Lama, and probably Barack Obama.
Oh, nice, very nice. I'll stay. I'll put Winton in there because Winton is just a absolute um, encyclopedia of knowledge. Just to hear him talk, I put Winton, Valentino, and let's pick. I'm going to pick another trumpet player just because I'm a trumpet geek at heart. Jerry Hay too.
Oh yeah, and Jerry could bring some good wine too, because
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, he's got the collection. All right, so you've got three additional chairs at this table, and you can invite any three people from history. Any three people that are no longer with us could be at this table for the dinner party as well. Who would you want to have there?
I'm going to stick with trumpet players too because this is the trumpet forum. I got to have Freddie, I got to have Woody, and I got to have Clifford there.
Oh man, yeah. Now we're talking. That's the part.
Valentino's going to feel left out right now.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
what the hell are they talking about?
What is this trumpet thing? Lacquer plated or raw?
Say again?
Lacquer plated or raw?
Raw, definitely.
Okay. What's your favorite quote?
I don't know. I don't have one.
Okay. That's a good one. I don't have one. And then that could be your quote. What's your greatest fear?
I guess not being able to play the trumpet, something happening that I couldn't play it. I think most musicians go through that of not being able, if we can't do what we've spent all this time learning to do and we love doing, I think that would be a pretty scary moment.
Yeah.
I think not being able to do what we love and what we've spent our whole lives learning to do, that's pretty scary.
All right. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
I guess I would have to say to be able to fly, because then I could be a pilot and not have to have a plane and just go wherever I want to go, and it gets into the whole pilot thing. So yeah, we'll go with flying.
We'll go flying. Okay. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
Overrated. Okay. Well, I think the range thing on a trumpet is really, it becomes such a, I'm not saying it's overrated. I mean, it becomes such a huge thing that we all focus on and struggle with and spend a lot of our time on the instrument, is building range. I think, but in the end, it's about music. So I think if you ask the players that have the greatest range when they've got it, it's not a big deal to them anymore because they've got it.
Right.
So I think I think as players we put a huge amount of like thing on. I've got to get range. I've got to get range. I've got to get high notes. And the players, I think that in the end that do have it after once you've got it, it's like, well, you know, I want to do. It's not the biggest deal to them. So maybe I think we put it on ourselves as trumpet players, as range is the most important, one of those big things that. But in the end, it should always be about music. So
Okay.
again, yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's over. It's not overrated, but it is. It's something that I think we spend too much time making it the biggest of deals when, you know, in the end, when we're called for something, it's about playing music and it's not about what high notes we've got.
Right. Okay. Well, the follow-up question is, this is, what aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most underrated?
I would say creative, being a really good creative soloist, I think is underrated. I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of depth and the amount of work it takes to be able to improvise in multiple different music genres. So I think, yeah, I think soloists like it. There's a lot of soloists that are really beautiful trumpet players, and they don't get the credit they deserve because maybe it's not something that, you know, gets house or something like that. Doesn't get people stand up and cheer after they play, that kind of thing. It's more of a subtle thing. It's more of a beautiful musical thing. So I think that side of playing, like someone like Chet Baker, like all about tone and lines and sound, like that kind of playing. If somebody just played like Chet Baker today, it's harder for them to get the recognition that they would deserve without putting something else with that. So I think just in general, just creative players that play really beautiful, pretty playing. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
It would be try and develop and be the best musician in the widest categories possible. That don't think, okay, growing up I just thought, oh, I'm going to play giant steps as fast as I can right now, and I'll work and I'll be able to do this and that because I can do that. No, it's trying to be as versatile as possible and trying to be able to do as many things as you can well. I think if I told myself in college I need to work on this and this so that when I get out of college I can work as a musician, work as a trumpet player, and it will make this side of my other side of my playing great too. I think I wish I had understood that while I was in college. I mean, I appreciate and I value the amount of effort and time I put into certain things, but I wish I'd balanced it more. I wish I'd balanced what, because I then had to do a lot of hard work when I came out of college or later on to be able to try and bring the other side of my playing to where I thought it was or felt it was balanced with my improvising. So,
yeah. Okay, cool. So while you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
I think enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment that you're in. Because I look back on many moments where I was worried about something at the time, or I was thinking about this at the time. And in the end, it's like our life is just chapters and it moves constantly. There's always change, constant change. You'd be working in this band for 1 minute, next this band for another. It's like this constant change. So nothing is stays the same forever. So enjoy the moment you're in, and think of things as chapters in your life, because doors open, doors close, doors open, doors close, and try not to worry too much about things you have no control over.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, final question, Brad. What do you want your legacy to be?
Wow, that's deep. I honestly, I would just, I would like to just leave something on this planet musically that I'm proud of, and hopefully reaches people and makes people feel good. And that's to just try and create some music and play trumpet to my highest ability and have people enjoy it. That's it.
All right, cool. Well, Brad, thank you so much for taking time to hang with me and getting to know you. And, I really enjoyed this. There's some really fantastic nuggets that you shared with us, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of what you've got in store, both with your ongoing gig with BS&T, and hopefully we'll get the Mason Brothers back out there and doing some stuff.
I'm actually getting ready to record my own record right now. So
even better.
Yeah, that'll be hopefully coming out in about a year. I've more or less got everything written right now, and that's going to be based kind of a horn section vibe, but with a quintet, jazz quintet, but with a horn section as part of that kind of writing. So just to express the influences that I've had over the last 10 years of my life. But I appreciate, and also Jose, I appreciate you for having me here and being part of your great podcasts with so much great trumpet knowledge that's come before here.
Oh man, this is absolutely my pleasure. And we're going to stay in touch. I guarantee you that we're going to stay in touch, and hopefully I'll be able to catch I'm only a few hours from New York, so maybe I can get up there and start catching some live shows. So I'll stay on top of your schedule. Absolutely.
Awesome.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. Make sure that you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff so you can stay in touch with us. Make sure you check out Brad and follow him on the various social media platforms that he's on. And just links are down in the show notes as always. And make sure you support our sponsors. So, we're all in this together. So we appreciate you and hope nothing but the best for you. And as always, peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signal, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.